We should start by, this is the letter Pe, the mouth, which is words and breath, speaking, singing, that sort of thing. So we tried to learn some Hebrew a few weeks ago. So why don't we all just kind of stand up and we'll repeat a few things. First of all, on the shirt here is the Shema. So Lee and Sarah have printed this up, and shirts are available for people if they wanted to get them. They could talk to Lee and Sarah about that. They do some printing, and so we're going to have other shirts with other words. I'll read it first. Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Should be pretty easy to remember. That's called the Shema. So let's everybody say that. So you're using your own mouth to be having Hebrew words in it. Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. And there's another one that we learned that they printed up on this strip that you could put like in your car windshield or something, which was Hodu la Yahweh ki tov ki le olam chazdo. Hodu is the word for to give thanks. Hodah and Hodu both mean give thanks. In fact, David Klug did a study where he took about half a dozen different words of different types of thanksgiving. But nevertheless, Hodu means to give thanks. La means unto, it's the letter Lamed. And then Yod He Vav He, you could pronounce it as Yahweh. So Hodu la Yahweh. Ki, Kaf Yod, means for or because or thus. Ki Tov, Tov is the word good. So Hodu la Yahweh ki tov. Let's say that. Hodu la Yahweh ki tov. And then the next phrase is ki, because, for, le'olam, unto forever or unto the eternal extent. Chazdo, chesed, chet samek dalet, is tender loving kindness, mercy. His just the heart expression of deep compassion and care is chesed. But when you add a vav at the end, it makes it his, but then the syllables are shifted. So instead of saying chesed-o, it's chazdo. Ki le'olam chazdo, for his mercy endures forever. And if you look through the Psalms, David uses this phrase many times. There's a couple Psalms where every other phrase, he makes a statement, and then he says, Ki le'olam chazdo. Or Hodu la Yahweh ki tov ki le'olam chazdo is mentioned many times. So to say this word, many times in some of the Psalms will be where you'll have a director, and then the entire audience responds with this phrase, ki le'olam chazdo. So to teach you to say that or have the words in your own mouth, this is a great, simple, first step thing to be able to say. Okay, so let's say it. Hodu la Yahweh ki tov ki le'olam chazdo. I'm going to write it so you'll be seeing the familiar, because speaking and writing. Okay, so here is Hodu, which is a hey, that's the H sound. Ho, remember the Vav can sound like an O, U, V, or W. Dalet, Vav. So the phonetics are H, O, D, U. Hodu. Remember, the Vav can sound like either an O or a U, or a V or a W. Hodu, La, Lamed, Yod, He, Vav, He. Hodu, La, Yahweh, Ki, Kaf, Yod, Tov, Tet, Vav, Bet. Remember, the B can sound like either a B or a V, and the Vav can sound like an O, a U, a V, same letter, or a W. Hodu la Yahweh ki tov, ki, le, and then ayin, vav, lamed, mem, olam, ki le'olam, chesed, chet, samek, dalet. And then again with the vav at the end, it means his, right? So his chesed, but you pronounce it as chazdo. Okay, so let's all say that again. Hodu la Yahweh ki tov ki le'olam chazdo. If you ever hear anybody quote this verse, I will bet you 99.5 times out of 100, you'll never hear La Yahweh. They might say Adonai, and they might say Hashem, or they might say the Lord. But if you read through, in the Hebrew, it says Lamed Yod He Vav He. And on the back here, Gabor La Yahweh, the Lamed is a prefix, means unto. Remember when we were doing the letter Lamed, which is the 12th letter, it's like a shepherd's staff. It's got the end that pulls, and then it's got the straight end that pokes. So it's push, pull, teach, learn. It's to repeat around and around. As a matter of fact, if you say the word hallelujah, it's Hey, Lamed, Lamed, Hallel, and you might say it's Lamed, Yod, Hey, and Yod, Hey is the short form or the poetic form of the word Yod, He, Vav, He. So Hallel, but they might not have this there. They'll just go right into Laya, Hallelu, if there's a Vav there, Hallelujah. So if somebody says Hallelujah, it's speaking Hebrew. It's not a translation into English or Latin or something. It is pure Hebrew. And the interesting thing, if you look at Lamed, Yod, Lamed, Lyle, and you look in the Red Dictionary, it means night or of the night. Lila is the word Lila, that's night. If you put a dalet, the door to darkness, the door to the night, is Delilah. That's the name of the lady that had Samson's eyes put out, remember? It was his undoing. But Lul, Lamed Vav Lamed, which is a similar word, is a spiral staircase, which is also a picture of the DNA double helix. And so this David Matthews was doing this study, how the Jacob's ladder, the vision that he had when he was laying there, that we think, oh, was it a ladder? Like an extension ladder? It's a big extension ladder, the 2 feet down here and the rungs and angels going up and down on it. It's like, I don't know how many of you have climbed up and down extension ladders, but you can only do one at a time the whole way. You can't have angels ascending and descending unless it was one at a time, and that's a long way from the heavens down here. But it might have been a spiral staircase. It doesn't say it was a ladder. Again, it's something we've spun into English. If it's like this big spiral staircase, it's almost like a picture of DNA. But what I'm saying is, Hallelujah has embedded in it this picture of spinning. And so you can picture people doing Hebraic dancing, of spinning around. And even in your mind, if not physically, when you say Hallelujah, it's almost like picture yourself spinning and rejoicing before Yahweh. Even if, like I said, even if it's not physical, you can certainly do it in your mind's eye, being almost this disembodied spirit. Rejoice in your spirit with twirling. There's something about spinning and twirling, even in the appearance of the structure of DNA being, or like a spiral staircase being a physical model. In the spirit, there's many words that talk about this spinning effect. So again, let's go through it again. And again, having the words in your mouth, rehearse saying these things. Hodu la Yahweh ki tov ki le olam kazdo. And as you read the Psalms, if you have a Tanakh, when you see that, put it into musical form. If you can only learn a phrase in Hebrew to sing this stuff. Sing the Shema. Does anybody know the Shema in song? You guys know it. I didn't see any hands raised, but I know he knows it. As a matter of fact, just for what it's worth, we're talking about the restoration of the language. There was this one time, me and Dieter and another friend went down to, it was down near Bend, wasn't it? The Smith Rocks. We had to do a bit of walking, but we came around this backside and there's this huge, magnificent rock area, almost like this big amphitheater. And we sang Shema, and it just echoed. And it's like, this was a number of years ago. If the ancient Israelites happened to be in America, which there's evidence that they were, when was the last time anybody actually sang these words to ring out through this landscape? And yet, all creation awaits the revealing of the sons of Elohim, the Gabor La Yahweh, the men, the Ish of Israel, to proclaim his glory, to have these words and set them out over the landscape. I thought it was a tremendous occasion. And it's like, wow, to be able to participate in that event, that nature can hear man's words proclaiming the Shema. It's like thousands of years since it was ever spoken, maybe ever. But you want to sing it now? Shall we sing this? The words are pretty simple, and I know some people here know the tune. Dieter, you want to come up and help sing it? I haven't sung this for a while myself, so it'll be, don't worry about being off pitch. Don't even worry about being off pitch. We haven't rehearsed this, by the way. I just cold called him up here. Okay, ready? Shema Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. And then there's another one. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Ba'ed. We're going to do a shofar blast, and the thing about Pei is that it lines up with the Mishkan pattern with the festival of Sukkot, which is the ingathering of all the tribes. It's one of 3 commanded festivals, what's called Aliyah festivals. Aliyah means to go up. Jerusalem is on a mountain higher up than the rest of the land, and so for the people to come back to Jerusalem is to Aliyah, which is a recongregation of the 12 tribes. So we've got 4 horns here. The other thing about the Pei, we've got to erase this and we'll draw it on there, is that it lines up in the Mishkan pattern with the altar of incense. And on the different altars, there was a square altar, and there was these 4 horns on the altar. And so when me and Jamie and Daryl and Todd Bennett were at Shiloh, the place of the tabernacle in northern Israel, the 4 of us stood there and we put up our hands. We made this declaration of repentance to Yahweh. It was a spontaneous thing. And it was this image of these 4 horns of the altar of incense. And so we've got 4 horns here. I've got 2 brass horns and 2 shofars. And so we'll have these 4 horns. Picture the altar of incense while we blow this. Picture it as being, remember the altar of incense was an image of the prayers of the saints arising up to Yahweh's throne. And he says it's a sweet savor to him. So as we're blowing this, just pray. And just lift up the kavod. Interesting thing about the word kavod is glory. It means weight. It's also liver, which is the heavy organ. So it's like this weight, but it's also that which is most highly regarded. It's like, boy, that's pretty heavy, man. That's like really a noteworthy thing. So as we blow these horns, Randy was going to come up and Mark. So we'll just put the, and again, this is not about us blowing the shofars. Picture Sukkot, the coming back, the regathering of the 12 tribes to honor Yahweh's word from wherever they were dispersed, coming back to offer up a voice of praise, of his kavod, as incense before him. So Yahweh, may you hear the sound of this shofar as we try to listen to your voice, the sound of the shofar, as you did from Mount Sinai. This is our response, like a choir's response to the main theme. This is our hearts responding to you. Todah Yahweh. supposed to blow the shofar for the new moon. Let's do another blast. That's a Rosh Chodesh, the new moon of the 6th month. Some people say 5th, some people say 6th, but nevertheless, for Rosh Chodesh. Thank you, Yahweh. Thank you. Thanks. What we said after we did the Shema, just for what it's worth, is Baruch is Bet Resh Kaf. It's where we get the word break. The consonants of BRK. Breaking the knee to bow down. It means to bless or to bow down and to bless. Baruch Atah is basically Alef Tav Hey, which means you or with. That's at the Baruch Atah Yahweh. That's actually a different one. Baruch Shem. Excuse me. There's different blessings that start with Baruch. Baruch Shem. That's, remember the word name, but it's also place or renown or fame or occupation. Baruch Shem Kavod. That's the word Kavod, which is glory or weight, the one we were just talking about. Kavod Malkuto is Mem Lamed Malkut. I think there might be a Vav in there. Malkuto. Melech is a king. So Malkut is kingdom. And then the Vav at the end makes it the his. And see the Mem, remember that's a place. Like a womb, right? But it also means of or away from. So it can mean the place where you're from, but it also means you're away from that. Remember, the mem in relationship to the noon is the time of counting, the 49, like being pregnant or a gestation period, and the noon is the letter that jumps up and out of. So mem, as we did in the 13th week, the mem can mean chaos, like water, like a tsunami, like this wave, because like a tsunami, like there's an earthquake or something, and it's coming underwater, and all of a sudden, wham, you get this tidal effect. But mem can mean water, it can mean counting, waiting, it can mean the hidden thing, which is suddenly then revealed, but it can mean the place where something's from, or it can mean the concept of something hidden, which will then be exposed. But the word melech means king, but if you look again in the red dictionary, you'll see that it also means one who takes counsel. So we have this concept of like the kingdom of priests, or a kingdom of kings and priests. But the word king literally means one who takes counsel. And you could say one who takes counsel of what? From mem, lamed kaf. Remember the letters kaf and lamed have to do with the Torah. So in the letter, the word lamed kaf literally means to you, or it can mean go. So you can look at melech as meaning one who takes counsel from the Torah instructions, or it receives counsel from even a higher authority, even though this is the king, and it's dispatched. That king dispatches, or maybe the king is the one who then dispatches others. There's all these pictures that you can read into simply mem lamed kaf. Vav tav is a plural, but in this case, a melkut is, you might say, the jurisdiction or the reign of the melech. Dave Matthews, the way he studies letters, he'll then also address the gematria or the letter number value and look at that gematria and compare it to other things. That's a whole other study that I don't even address. I'm acknowledging, and Jamie occasionally acknowledges, that it's a factor, but this class isn't about gematria, nor is it about the modern flame letters, nor is it about rabbinical commentaries and how they weave together, though there's many valid things in that whole area of study. This is about showing you eriktology. Again, the word erik, ayin, resh, kaf. Erik means to put into order, row, to assess, to estimate, to appraise, to give regard. And on the chart, the definition, according to the dictionary, is right down here at the bottom. And it says uncle Eric or uncleric. It's a play on words. there's a lot of plays on words in this chart. I'm going to get to a couple of them tonight. I'm just trying to go over and over, as I said before, because the word for learn means to repeat and to go over and over. So here's a play on words of Uncle Eric. U-N-C-L-E is uncle, E-R-I-C is Eric. Well, my nieces and nephews happen to call me Uncle Eric. But if you read it a different way, what you get is uncleric. What's a cleric? We get the same word clerk and clergy from the same root word. And whether it's a Latin root or a Greek word, if you look up in the English dictionary, it says the cleric, clerk, clergy are the ones who know how to read, compared to the laity who don't know how to read. And their job is to maintain the ecclesiastical order, which is to say, the church authority who says, we've already decided what we're going to let the peasants know. We've determined the doctrines, we've determined how to lay them out, and the psychological manipulation has already been put in place by us, and we now are commissioning, as it were, knights and esquires. Even the word attorney is an esquire. Sometimes behind an attorney's name, you'll see the letters ESQ written, which means esquire. Thomas Jefferson, I guess, was an esquire. But what they're in liege. That's the word L-I-E-G-E, right? L-I-E-G-E, in liege. The esquires are in liege to the knights. That's where we get the word allegiance. They owe everything to doing. So when you vow liege to somebody or something, like pledging allegiance to a flag, you're swearing and vowing that you will now be in commissioned service to that flag. Is it to a flag? Is it to a government? Is it to an ideology? Is it to a people? Is it to a common thought? What is it? Well, it's to a flag. You're pledging or vowing your liege to that piece of cloth. Interestingly enough, when you have a gold braid around the American flag, it's no longer the American flag, it's an admiralty flag, which means that the sovereign in that courtroom is like a captain on a ship or a king in his own kingdom, and it's no longer the American Republic. That's a whole other story. The point we're talking about is words, vows, what your words do, what your words mean. So if you sit there and say, I liege to something, well, who's putting you up to that? Did the clerk or the clergy or the cleric tell you what to say? And so you go, oh, okay. And they tell you that it means one thing when it really means another. Is this word uncleric or is it Uncle Eric? My point is, if there's two ways to read words, how do you know which way you're reading it? So anyway, this word eriktology down here, Uncle Eric, is just a little riddle. And we're going to talk about some riddles tonight in the language. Baruch Shem Kavod Malkuto, and then there's that phrase we said about Hodud Leolam, Leolam Va'ed. The word Va'ed, see Leolam, Lamed Ayin O, there's that O sound. And speaking, last week we did the ayin. Ayins are a little tricky. Sometimes they're pronounced as an A, sometimes as an E, sometimes as an O, sometimes as a U, but they're actually kind of a GH, kind of a guttural sound. And because they're a guttural sound, there's other letters that have a guttural kind of a K sound, which would be a het, otherwise sometimes printed as a CH, or you'll have the kaf, or you'll have the kuf. So what you have is four letters with kind of a K sound, and so quite often in the scriptures you'll see it transliterated, where they'll sometimes give this a G, sometimes a K, sometimes an A, E, O, or U. Anyway, this is the O and the O, Leo, then Lamed Mem, Leolam. If that means forever, if you say Va'ed, which is Vav, Ayin, Dalet, Va'ed, how can you think of this concept? How can you have forever and beyond? It's something that was in Toy Story, the movie, right? Buzz Lightyear said, to infinity and beyond. It's like, you don't get beyond infinity. Infinity is beyond. So how do you get forever and ever? You see, it's translated forever and ever. But that's not necessarily saying what it is in Hebrew. So when you get this, anyway, I'm just trying to show you how the rest of the song that we sang, that other verse, where that comes from. By the way, that's not written in Deuteronomy where the Shema is written. That's added by people who want to sing about the kingdom which is eternal. So I've tried to make this distinction through the weeks, so I'll say it again. The Christian notion that there's a different covenant with a different people, with different terms, different holy days, Saturday rather than Sunday, Christmas and Easter rather than Sukkot and Pesach, different words, different names, different terms and conditions. Is it valid? Well, there might be a different covenant with different people. Remember, Yahweh said to Abraham when he had Ishmael, he said, hang on, 12 princes are going to come from Ishmael. But this covenant is with Yitzhak, Isaac. Now, what kind of covenant was with Ishmael? We don't know. We don't study that covenant. Is there terms and conditions between Yahweh and Ishmael? Maybe. I don't know. We're not studying that covenant. Is there special terms and conditions with the Christian New Testament? Maybe. I don't know. We're not studying that covenant. We are studying the covenant that Yud-He-Vav-He, Yahweh, Yehovah, Yahuwah. We are studying the covenant that Yod-He-Vav-He made with Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, otherwise known as Israel. That's the covenant we're studying. If you break these words apart with the beneficial help of Ernest Klein's dictionary, you can break these things down. Hamem generally means them as a suffix. Bet resh means pure, clean. It also means exterior. It's also like threshed grain, which is like got all the chaff off it. It's the nuggets of the pure seed. Aber literally is the pinion, like the wings of an eagle, that which, or any bird, actually, that which gives it the ability to fly. So this has to do with strong pinion wings, pure, making them somehow pure and clean. These are the concepts embedded within Abraham. Yitzhak, Zadi is a sprout. We'll get to that after it's the letter after the pay. Remember, it's like Aaron's rod that was in the Ark of the Covenant that budded. It was this dead stick. And yet when Korah and some other leaders of the tribes said to Moses, hey, you're just putting your brother and your sister in as leaders. What are you doing here? This is supposed to be tribes of Israel. We think you're doing some funny business. And Moses says, come on, you guys. He says, no. We should all have a shot at being the high priest. So he said, okay, have all the leaders of the tribes bring your walking sticks into the presence of Yahweh, and tomorrow he'll show us who he chooses, who Yahweh chooses. So the staff of Aaron not only sprouted out a branch, but it budded and flowered and had fruit on it all overnight. Well, that doesn't happen. That takes months. That's through the seasons of spring and summer and into the fall, but it did it all overnight. It's like, boy, the branch that budded. Well, that's a picture of the Zadi. Here's the dead stick, the branch that sprouts. It's a picture of here's a caterpillar, and it sprouts a wing. It's a Zadi picture. We'll get to that after the pay. But I'm just trying to show you that this picture in Yitzhak, Chet Kuf, there's a picture of the big white fence of the Mishkan, the Chet, and the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke that was over it, which is Yahweh's covering over all his stuff. Hok, I believe that's the way you spell Yitzhak. The word Hok has to do with his commandments and the whole package deal. The whole ball of wax, as it's called, the whole package deal of Yahweh's stuff. So what you could do is basically look up the words that have to do with Zadi Het, which is laughter. And Yod means he will, and so there's something about this hilarious, gut-breaking, explosive laughter regarding Isaac. Remember, his mother and father were 100 years old, roughly, when he was born. Yaakov has to do with the heel, or that which follows you, like your footprint follows you, or your shadow follows you, but it also has to, so it has to do with that's what's coming later. That's kind of where the kuf comes in, but it also means to turn something into, from the XY axis of two-dimensionality, the Z-axis is the vertical, 3 dimensions. There's something about the word Yaakov which means to go into 3 dimensions from 2 dimensions. Kind of like a picture of Superman leaping over barricades. So here you have in these 3 words remember he says, I'm the Elohim of Abraham, Elohim of Yitzhak, Elohim of Yaakov, who got his name changed to Israel. And as we discussed, I believe it was last week, the word Yeshar is very similar to Asher, which is the straight path. It also means to strengthen, to authenticate, to confirm, to prove whether something, this really is that. And so last week talked about the word I am that I am, I will be what I'll be, was his Ehyeh, Asher, Ehyeh, which is the way you know that I am who I am, Yahweh says, is because what I say is going to happen is going to happen. Over 80 times in the book of Ezekiel, Yahweh has this phrase. He says, then they will know that I am Yahweh. What does that mean? Many times in other books, you'll see this phrase, where it's one of Yahweh's little pet phrases. He'll say, then you'll know that I am Yahweh. And you go, what? What do you mean by that? Then you'll know that I'm Yahweh. Because it's a secret code. You see, he writes in riddles. He writes in patterns. And the part of the study of this course is to observe the patterns and the study what's embedded in the different words by the letters that are used. That's the eriktology thing. This is in columns and rows, and that's what the word erik means, is to give a value, to notice and regard something that we've never regarded before. We thought words were just, you just spell words. You just say things, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. They're just words. Every word, every letter in Hebrew is really significant. And we're studying the nature of the significance. This letter Pei, meaning a mouth, is all about the words. What words? What are words? We've been told that ancient man were like, you might say, excessively developed apes, which started grunting. Now we have languages. Is a language simply an evolutionized series of grunts? If it's not, where did it come from? Well, if you look back in the Bereshit, the book of Genesis, in the very beginning, it says that Yahweh took the dust of the earth, clay, molded it, and he formed this creature, this being, it's literally a clay object. He then breathes with his mouth-to-mouth contact. He breathed. See, the word pei doesn't mean speaking. It's just a mouth. And so everything related to a mouth is pei business. Breathing is also pei breath business. Blowing, which is forceful, intentional breathing, is also pei concepts. So Yahweh, with his pei, breathed in the Adam. And it says he became a living nefesh. Well, the interesting thing about the letter pei, in Paleo, it's shaped like this. That's a mouth, right? If you fill in, back when I was a kid, I think Sheriff John or something, they had this guy that would do a squiggle and then he turned it into a picture. Kind of the same sort of thing, what you can do with it. So you could say, well, how's that a mouth? well, there's the other lip, and then here's the nose, and here's the head, there's an eyeball, and there's the lower jaw, right? There's a mouth, and here you can put teeth in it, and a big tongue coming out of it, and, there's a pei. So I'm just trying to show you that when you see that letter, the pei is the mouth. In modern Hebrew, the regular pei, there's this little thing up on there, and it comes back around like that. It's kind of the same picture. You can kind of see a mouth there. See, there's the eye and the ear and mouth being open type of a thing. But there's a pei sophit, there's 5 sophit letters, and on the chart, we've got the 5 letters drawn through here. The word soph means at the end, we ended that with the word Yosef. Anyway, the pei sophit is just like this, only without the bottom. It's this letter shape here. And it only appears at the end of the word. Whenever pei shows up at the end of the word, you'll see that form. The study of why those 5 letters is a whole different thing. I make a suggestion there, but we'll get into that another class. The point about the pei is that we have the letter P. We also have, remember, the PH in English. Does anybody know why the letter P, if you add an H to it, it sounds like an F? Does anybody know where that comes from? Why should pei, the P, also have a F sound? In English, it's just one of those stupid, confusing things, right? It's like Price Pfister starts with a PF, and it's like, why should the P be silent with the second word? The point is, it comes out of Hebrew. Because if you have the letter pei, it sounds like an F unless you have a dot in it, in which case it sounds like the P. My point is, it has 2 sounds. Like I wrote before, the bet can sound like a B or a V. The pei can sound like a P or an F. But instead of writing it as an F, because it's still a pei, they put an H next to it and it sounds like a PH. And you could say, well, what's the difference? Just like the letter ayin, if it doesn't matter. Like if you have the word Gaddafi, right, the leader of Libya, sometimes I've seen it spelled with a G, sometimes with a K, sometimes with a Q. And the point is, if you're just dealing with phonetics, it just doesn't matter. Write it with a P, write it with an F, PH, what's the big deal? But in Hebrew, every letter makes a difference. Every letter has a meaning. Therefore, the way you spelled Gaddafi's name, it all depends on not the phonetics like we deal with it in English, but in his language, or in Hebrew, which of those letters you chose makes all the difference in the world as to why it's spelled that way. In which case, if the F is actually the Vav, the 6th letter, it would make a huge difference whether you spelled it with a Vav or a pei. That's why. And if you don't have any regard of the spelling, but you only regard the phonetics, then it doesn't matter. But this study is a study of why it matters. My point is this. El means, it's translated typically as God, right? But that's the phonetics of Gimel Dalet. Gad is another way, like one of the names of the tribes. But the interesting thing about Gimel Dalet is it means fortune or luck. Specifically, it was the name of a deity of the Canaanites, which was the deity or the Lord or the Baal of fortune and luck. So on our dollar bills in the United States of America, when it says, "In God we trust," if I'm trying to change my mind and change my thinking and change my words, I can't keep saying that I'm going to put my trust and confidence in the Canaanite deity that was conquered by Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So I'm going to say, in Yahweh I trust, not in Gimel Dalet I trust. So I can't quote, "In God I trust." I'm not going to say it, because I'm trying to change my mind, change my words, change my vows. Remember, Yeshua said, we will be held accountable for every single word that comes out of our mouth. We can say, I'm speaking English, I'm not speaking Canaanite. The point is, phonetic sound bites and frequencies project energies into the world. Remember, the psalmic was ripples, frequencies, wavelengths. Samek, I, and Pei are all wrapped up together. So again, to deal with the colors of the shirt, this week, according to the chart here, is the green letter. The Samek, Ayin, and the Pei, the Samek lines up with the menorah, which is in the set-apart covered place. So I'm wearing this black shirt because it's like the covered place, and the light inside the covered place was the menorah. Then last week we did the Ayin. I didn't mention it last week, I'll mention it now. On the chart, it lines up with this box shaped like this with 2 circles. Well, if you read about the table of showbread, it had 2 piles of 6 loaves. And so if you look real close on the chart, it's like, I know that I've seen people who have studied this, and maybe they're right, I don't know, it doesn't matter so much for what I'm talking about. They say that there was these racks, and they stacked the loaves up on the racks. The idea was, at the altar of incense, there was a special formula of spices that Yahweh said, if anybody copies this formula, you should pay him a lot of money and buy it because it's a really nice smelling formula. No, that's not what he said. What he said is, if anybody copies this formula, put them to death. But I know you can go on the internet and buy the formula. They say, oh, they tweaked it this way or that way. And it's like, I think I should stay away from it. Leave one of the elements out. Fine. I'll smell the rest of it. I don't even want to go close to something that Yahweh said, if you do this, you will be put to death, and here's the formula, and make sure you don't do it. You say, well, now that we know the formula, we don't know the exact proportion, so it's like, it almost kind of sounds like the Garden of Eden, where he says, don't touch that tree. He didn't say don't touch it, he said don't eat it. Don't eat that tree. If he says don't make this formula of incense, we go, well, I'll just change it a little bit. Isn't that kind of like saying, well, maybe I'll just touch it and smell it, and boy, and pretty soon the next thing you know, it's like, uh-oh, let's not even go there. My point is, the table of showbread had these freshly baked loaves, and they put them in this small room, and the altar of incense was this wonderful incense would be burning, and the loaves would pick up the flavor of the incense. So the loaves can't be piled on top of each other like a layer cake. They've got to be separated out. So it's like, if you were going to take these loaves and lean them against each other, how would you do that? Put 3 of them together and then put the other 3 next to it? That's kind of the imagery behind this little symbol I have drawn if you look real close. But other people said they put them on racks. Like I said, I don't know that it matters, but the point is, if you've got 2 piles of loaves and they're kind of leaning on each other, it might end up looking something like that. But the point is, that way they get the air and they get the incense on them. But you can almost see this is a mask with eyes. And if you put like little ear things coming off, it almost looks like some glasses. Or you might almost see kind of a binocular sort of thing going on here. The table of showbread lines up with the ayin, and it's almost like eyes. But the word showbread, it's like, what kind of bread is showbread? Again, we're talking ayin business. The word showbread, if you look in the scriptures, is simply panim. Pei, nun, yod is pane, and then if you add an M, that's plural. Panim, wait a minute, that's the word faces. Pei, there's that mouth. Nun, remember, it's the thing that jumps out of, and in the standard alphabetic sequence, there's a mem in front of the pei. So mem is the environment that the nun jumps out of. The mem is the womb, and the nun is the one born, remember? So here I'm showing you how to overlay some concepts non-alphabetically. In other words, nun doesn't follow pei. Nun follows mem. But because nun follows mem in the natural sequence, we get the picture that mem is a closed place that's harboring something, like a ship in the harbor, and then, like the ship that goes out of the harbor, the nun comes out of the pei, out of the mem. But when you have a pei nun, you can kind of overlap that image and to say the mouth is an environment. What jumps out of your mouth? Words, breath, words, maybe vomit. The point is, something comes out of your mouth. And I say vomit because there's places that ties into what we're talking about here. Anyway, yod, mem, is a suffix ending which is plural. Again, to rehearse, you've got 2 plural suffixes. One is a vav tav, ot, and the other one is im, which is yod mem. But the word yod mem also means water. Mayim is actually waters. Yod mem is actually the word for west. In Israel, if you're facing from Egypt, looking at Israel, Yemen is to the south. Yemen is right hand. The country of Yemen is to the south. It's on the southern edge of Saudi Arabia. In Hebrew, Yemen means south. The Mediterranean Sea is to the west of Israel. So the word yod mem, im, which is water, is literally west. Interestingly enough, the word for north is zephan, zadi, pei, nun. Zadi, pei, nun. Well, pei, nun is the word for face. Pei, nun, yod mem is faces. But what's a zadi, pei, nun? Well, this is a sprout of a face. What is a sprout of a face? I'm trying to show you different ways to play around with this. What you'll find is that the word zephan literally means secret, hidden. But it's also the word north. So when you read a psalm where it talks about something on the sides of the north, it's zephan. And when in the prophet, the book of the Bible called Zephaniah, is literally Zephaniah, or the secret Yah, the secret of. The word of is implied, so it's the secret of Yah, Yah's secret. Yahweh's secret somehow is this prophet's name, Zephaniah. Well, that in Zephaniah, where it talks about restoring the Hebrew language, the pure tongue in the later days. Is Hebrew the place where Yahweh's secret mysteries are hidden? That's part of the premise of this class. And we're going to get into some other verses here in the second half where I want to show you some of the things about the proof, at least evidence to demand a proof, that Hebrew is the place, is the zephan where Yahweh has hidden not only his words, but his words are his face. So you look at this and say, Pei Nun Yod Mem, if that's faces, Pei Nun Yod is the word face, but face is always written in the plural for some reason. You don't just see Pene, but if you do see the word Pene, typically you'll see that it's translated as before you. Like if you're standing before me, it'll say, oh, Pene. It's like, well, you're standing in regards to my face. So the word face is in a contextual reference of proximity. But if you're saying faces, what does that got to do with the table of showbread? Because it doesn't say showbread, that's English. What it says is panim. Well, panim is also faces. But there's 12 loaves of bread. What has that got to do with faces? Remember, according to the coded pattern, the ayin lines up with the table of showbread. Ayin lines up with Yom Kippur. That has to do with Judgment Day. The scales. What are you going to be judged on Judgment Day? Faces? Masks? This looks like a mask, like a pair of goggles that you put on. Mask? What might you be judged for? Well, if Yeshua says you'll be judged for every word, what about your behavior? Well, maybe that's another one. What about your intention? What about your attitude? What about the inclination you had that was behind your intention, that was behind your behavior, that was also behind your word, and the expression on your face? And it's like, oh man, can't I get away with anything here? No. What if there are 6 different levels of faces on each side of the scales? Or maybe it's just a statement of saying there's 12 types of judgments that we're going to be held accountable for. Our words are only one. Our behavior is one. Maybe whether or not we chose to believe in a certain doctrine of salvation is only one. What about those other 10, those other 8? What the heck are we going to be held responsible for? Something to consider. These pictures tell us what to regard. That's the point. So if we sit there and say, gosh, if on Judgment Day we're going to be scrutinized, binoculars, the long-distant view, you also got the microscope, you've got different types of lenses. What if he's saying, I've got a dozen different types of lenses. You've got X-ray lenses, you've got long distance, short distance, you've got different filtered, colored lenses. He's got all kinds of different stuff that he looks at, and he looks at everything. The purpose of this class is to say when he says he's the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, which is Israel, it's not God or Gad, it's El, which is Elohim. But El as a prefix means emotion toward, but El itself, if you look in the Red Dictionary, means power or strength. And you could say, this is the he will, straight path to power and strength. But Psalmic resh, yod can be a prefix meaning he will, though yashar means straight. Psalmic resh is the word prince, as in sar shalom, prince of peace. But Psalmic resh is not just a prince, it's also a poet, a singer. What does a poet, a singer, and a prince do? Now here's part of the process of deciphering these words. What do they have in common? A prince's job is to defend the people. He's also supposed to collect taxes, determine what money goes to bridges, what money goes to education, what money goes to getting clean water, right? So the prince's job is to take difficult matters, process them, and distribute them and lay them out in such a way that it's of everybody's benefit to make life easier. What does a poet do? He takes complex ideological or philosophical matters and puts them into song and verse, so that we can all go, oh, I can grab it. I can remember that. Make a little ditty out of it. So does a singer, a folk singer especially. Back in the 60s, they took horribly traumatic sociological, political, war matters, and they spun them into phrases that you can latch onto and go over. And as you go over, and remember what happened in the 60s, at least in the United States, it changed your mind. The words that you heard changed your mind, and as you rehearsed them and spoke them, what happened? Reality changed. So here's a question about words. If words are not just primatal grunts out of primates from the very beginning, which evolved and developed, but words were given. Remember, what did Yahweh do after he breathed into Adam? To go back to that story? He spoke. He spoke. And if you look at the first 7 words that Yahweh spoke, the first 2 words were Peru Uravu. It's translated, go forth and multiply. Peru Uravu are commands right out of the mouth of Yahweh into a lump of clay that suddenly was turned on with life. It's like if you take a computer right out of the factory, it's got nothing on it. If you plug it into the wall, what's the first thing you have to do? Boot it up. Back in the olden days, we had floppy disks. You plugged it in, then you put in a floppy disk. Speaking Hebrew, Peru Uravu, and then the rest of the words, to Adam, was Yahweh booting up his mind computer. So this word, if you look in the dictionary of shofeh, shin pei hey, literally means lip, language, tongue, to smooth, make bare, like wind blowing on the top of a mountain where it blows all the foliage off. But it also means to heal, to cure, to make improvement, to cure from insanity. How can something you say cure from insanity, from lunacy? Restore to health? Could it be that this Hebrew language that Yahweh spoke to Adam after he turned on his breath, he booted up his brain with intelligence by speaking these words, which if we learn these words, will have the same effect on us to restore that which was lost, obscured, obfuscated, and or stolen by either our enemies or the great adversary, the Satan, or even Yahweh's own decree to demand loss, which we'll get to it right after this break. Yahweh demanded a loss of his words, of his language, of our wisdom and our understanding. So I'll just say this, we've got 30 seconds left. The ayin is the eye, which speaks of understanding, wisdom, knowledge. Eyes can open, eyes can close. Mouths can open and mouths can close. But specifically, pezadi means an open mouth. And the proposal is here, what Yahweh closed when it came to wisdom and understanding, when he closed our eyes because of our dealings with the occult, ocular, occult eyeball, what will open the understanding? The mouth, the mouth of Yah. To return to the mouth of Yah, that which opens, like a key is that which opens, literally in Hebrew. In Greek, a key is that which locks. What was the cause of the locking up of the word? They forsook his word, and so their wisdom and their understanding were closed. Their ayins were locked shut. We'll go to that verse right after the break. We're proposing that the words, the understanding, the wisdom will be opened by the opening of the mouth, the regarding of the words that Yahweh gave the people in Hebrew, and therefore we will be able to soar with hilarious laughter, bright shining forth, and be able to leap over all obstacles and adversaries because of the straight path where is our power and strength that he gave to our forefathers. That's the covenant we're going back to. And if somebody else wants a different covenant and wants to believe different theologies, they can do whatever they want. We're trying to go back to the covenant of Yodevave to Israel and have nothing to do with arguing doctrines with any of the other cults and religions across the face of the earth. This is not about that.